So, I've been using the GPD Win Mini for about a week now, and I have a lot of thoughts on it. Mostly good, some bad. But first, before we get to all of that, we need to rewind to when I first bought it, so you can have a bit more context about the whole buying experience. If you don't care about that, I'll put a thing here somewhere telling you where to go. Enjoy the video. Gamers, today's the day. I finally got it. I've been waiting forever. So I may as well give you a quick update here. So I ordered it in September. Right, so it is 9 in the morning. I am way too tired for this. And here is the GPD Win Mini campaign finally launched. So I'm just gonna go and buy it, I guess. I've never actually bought anything with Indiegogo before, so I'm quite scared. So let's just get it, I guess. And that, my guys, is the deed done. So now we just wait until November for it. I'm really excited for this. I genuinely am. Hopefully something turns up. It said it was going to come in November, but it didn't. It was roughly until about early December by the time they shipped it out. And then I was supposed to get it on like the 6th or something, or the 8th, but then it was late. So then I had to wait another week, or more like actually 10 days, because there were some delays. And then finally today, the 18th of December, I now have it. So let's get it open. And also I just had a bunch of mic issues, so hopefully this sounds good. And here it is, Epic Gamers, the box. Now I'm sure a lot of people are not super bothered about the unboxing, so I'll go over this as quickly as I can. Yo, there it is. Oh, those are the grips. So first we have to get it out of the box. Yes. So I did actually order the grips because I heard a lot of people say like maybe it's not worth getting, but I thought, you know what, I'll try it anyway. I may as well try it. Screws are tiny. Those are going to get lost in like 2 seconds. There we are. Those are the grips. Look at that. Yeah, it is a little hollow though, the plastic actually. It's slightly hollower than I was expecting really. Especially because they cost me an extra 30 quid. Next is just a standard adapter. I think this comes with like a US power cable or something. So this is a UK power plug adapter. And the main item. Let's yeet this out the way. Quite like the box actually. Oh, there is a lot of packaging actually, so that's a good and a bad thing. So first of all here, that's probably just like manuals and stuff. Here's the charging thing as well. Yeah, you can actually use 2 of them in there, so that's cool. If I can get it out, charging cable, a USB-A adapter. Here it is. It's so weird because when you see pictures and stuff, you never really know the true size of it. Yo, look at that. So I went for the 7840U version with 32 gigs of RAM and a 2 terabyte internal storage. The top feels really nice. This is a proper metal, this is. That is a little chunkier than I was expecting, actually. Yeah, look at that. As you can see, they are actually a fair bit bigger. So even though they do feel very similar to Vita ones, I'd say they actually look more like Switch ones. Yeah, again, the keypad is actually bigger than I thought it'd be, honestly. I heard a lot of people say how like it's not that usable, but to me, I think this is pretty alright. Shall we boot it up, guys? Let's boot it up for the first time. If I can find where the on switch is. Is that a backlit keyboard? Yo, that's a backlit keyboard. Now, if this goes according to plan, if this is what I want it to be, I will actually be selling my Steam Deck. Yo, okay, that is actually quite a nice screen as well. Guess it's a good time to test the keyboard. The arrow keys feel very nice. They have a really clicky feel to them. Man, just actually holding this in my hands now is just absolutely like crazy to me. I'm waiting 4 months for this. No, can we go to... oh, this is going to take forever. So, day 1. Okay, so the first day, and so far I'm absolutely loving this thing. It is absolutely awesome. Analog sticks, they feel actually pretty nice. I've only just woken up, so I'm really tired, but the keyboard feels pretty fine actually. Like, sure, you're not going to do any serious typing on here unless, you know, you're that dedicated. If you're used to a BlackBerry keyboard, you'd probably be great with this. You're just going to use it for, you know, typing in passwords, typing in PC shortcuts and stuff for games and whatnot. You're not going to be extensively using it, but when you do need it, it's very handy. Like, for example, having a physical, you know, Control-C, Control-V has helped me in a couple of applications where I can't just use the mouse to copy and paste or whatever. And the performance is awesome. Like, if you are somebody who keeps up with a lot of these things, you'll hear like, oh, you know, everything has a 7840U CPU and, you know, it's the standard stuff, if you do blah blah blah. You kind of forget how powerful this can be. I was running Forza Horizon 3 1080p 60 FPS, actually over 60 FPS on high settings. Now obviously it will dip occasionally, but honestly I don't care that much, and obviously if I do I can just change the settings. But the fact that this can actually run games at 1080p, it's not just, oh, it has a 1080p screen. That's crazy. And even games like, for example, if I boot it up here real quick, games like speedrunners easily run 1080p 120 FPS, but because it has that 120Hz screen, it feels really nice to play. And I know some people are complaining, oh, it doesn't have VRR, blah, 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 but for most people, you probably won't notice that. I haven't really noticed it at all. And again, because it has the keyboard, it has the trackpad and stuff, I can actually do things like Excel and Office and all the boring nerd stuff that you have to do on a daily basis. So yeah, so far, I'm really liking it. And just when I thought all was going well, disaster struck. My sister was messing with me and it slipped out of my hand and it dropped on the floor. Now somehow it's actually like surprisingly alright. Like for example, I don't even think you can tell, but there was a huge like bit of paint there where it hit the door, but it completely came off. So I'm really happy with that. And the hinge still works fine. I mean, I don't see any issues with the hinge. You wouldn't be able to tell anywhere around here that it dropped, except for the trigger. Not only is there visible damage, not only can you see where the impact happened, it won't register any inputs anymore. So I've had this thing for 1 day. 1 day! That's fantastic, that's great. At least now it's a good opportunity to go and contact customer support and see what they'll do about it. Right, so I've had this for about 4 days now, I think. Ever since I had that crack in the R2 button and it just obviously stopped working, it kind of took the wind out of my sails, as it were. Like I didn't want to use it nearly as much as I thought I would, because obviously, you know, a lot of mainly like racing games and first-person shooters, and surprisingly enough, games like speedrunners that actually do rely on this. I was able to map it with speedrunners, but Rocket League as well, a lot of games like that, they just didn't really work. And then I came with a very ingenious idea, which I'll show you now. Guys, my brain is so big right now, okay? So my big brain idea was, okay, this thinks that it's an Xbox controller. See there? Support your Xbox controller. So what about, okay, if I plug an Xbox controller in, and lo and behold, R2, look at that, R2, there we go. There we are, gamers. Look, so if I press R4 there, it actually does it. I press R2 around the back here. As you can see, nothing happens. Yo, okay, so it's not the ideal solution, but it is certainly better than nothing. I'm really glad there are some extra keys there. Now I can actually use the R4 button in order to play a lot of games, and that has definitely helped to an extent. For example, Forza Horizon 3 is now playable, and on top of that, GPD have finally got back to me. I will show you the correspondence now. All looking up, which is nice. It'll also be good to get some replacements for the other ones, such as L1, R1, and L2 as well. But honestly, the rest of this device is very durable, like, it's really nice. I really like the hinge on this. I didn't check if the microphone was plugged in. It holds in pretty much any position. One thing I will say is when you're playing games, especially like platformers and stuff, where you want to use the D-pad and the face buttons, it can get quite hot. Like if it's, you know, simple 2D platformers, you should be alright. If you're playing like, I don't know, Mario or like Shovel Knight or speedrunners or something like that, if you're playing a game that's a lot more intensive, I don't know, something like Ori, I haven't tried that on here yet, but something like that, when I'm around these R4 start buttons in particular, most of the heat seems to be around here. Again, if you're playing mostly racing and FPS games, your hands will be on the outside anyway, so it's not nearly as bad. And also around where the vent is here, around the back. Rocket League, I can easily get 1080 60 out of that, and I can even crank it up to like 90 FPS at 1080p ultra settings. So I know Rocket League's a relatively easy game to run. That is crazy. That is like Xbox Series S level of performance. This is actually amazing for its size, and it's incredibly well built. Like the more I use it, the more impressed I am. This weighs a bit. Like it's not heavy by any means, but you can feel its weight. It feels dense, really dense, like, especially if I flex it. The speakers sound surprisingly good. I'm saying these sound even better than the Steam Deck's ones, which the Steam Deck's one was already really impressive for what it was. And these are somehow even better. Overlay a clip of a quick soundbite, whatever I'm talking about. The main thing I really don't like about the buttons is that these start and select and menus buttons are all kind of just shoved in the middle there. Like it's almost like I'm saying GDP now, like it's a country. It sounds like they had no idea where to put these buttons, and so they kind of just shoved them in the middle and went, there you go. Ideally, if you wanted to do something like this, I think the best place to have done it would be around here, where the keypad is, so these two. When you're playing games like that would have been more comfortable. I can also understand they had very limited space here, and it's not too bad, unless, for some reason, your trigger breaks because you're a Muppet, and you need to keep pressing R4 all the time. But yeah, I actually use this a lot in bed as well, and it is surprisingly good for using in bed. I usually have it up like that, so the highest position, I kind of rest it on my chest, and that is a surprisingly comfortable experience. The only thing I will say again is it can get quite hot, especially when you're in bed for obvious reasons. You've got a blanket, so it's actually quite good for playing RPGs, you know, like Game Boy Advance games, all the retro stuff is pretty good as well. One of the biggest issues I have, and that is with GPD's software. Now on the one hand, I do really appreciate it's pretty much just stock Windows, like they've barely put anything on it. But on the other hand, you're greeted with this software, even with companies like Ioneo or something, like ones who are competing in a similar kind of space. Get it, space, because it's, anyway, they will have their own software, especially with like the Steam Deck, with the ROG Ally, with the Legion Go, blah blah blah. They will all have their own menu thingy that you can pull up during games. Here, not only is it obviously not a quick thing, so you have to come out of the game and go into it, which is fine, I don't really care too much about that. The main problem, it's just thrown at you, like there's all kind of metrics here and everything, and if you're using something like this for the first time, you probably won't have a clue what you're doing. Now sure, I get that this is kind of a niche product, like only people who know what they're doing will buy something like this, otherwise they just get, you know, a Switch or a Steam Deck or a whatever. But at the same time, other companies are doing something similar, so I would really like GPD to kind of step it up in their software department, or at the very least recommend a third-party solution that works well with it, and I still have warranty on it. Is that a bit of food on my, that's a bit of food on my finger. So the fact that I can open this up and I still have warranty, so I can change the SSD in here and still keep my warranty. Big win for GPD right there. Like that is a very awesome thing for them to do. And I'm the kind of person who prefers to just open it up anyway, because I really don't want to have to send it back and wait months and months before I get it back again. One of the cool things that is in this software though is the fan curve. On stock, it sounds like this. If you click this little curve icon here, it basically just sets a much less aggressive fan curve, and it sounds much better. It reminds me a lot of like when the Steam Deck first came out, and how I actually didn't mind it that much, but it did sound really loud. This got even louder than that. And again, you can choose like all sorts of TDP, GPU settings, all the rest of it. The weird thing though, again, is like this software is called Motion Assist, mainly for the motion controls, but why all the TDP settings, everything is in this Motion Assist app and not its own thing? I didn't notice that at first, so it's only when I first opened it up, I was like, oh, they're all here. Oh, I see. Those triggers and those shoulder buttons may be an issue if you're carrying this thing without a case like I am. Because obviously now I'm considering getting a case, but originally I thought it was going to come with a case, but it didn't. So I'm kind of like, oh, okay, which, you know, is not the end of the world, obviously, but until I drop it, just a good reminder for whatever handheld device you have, just make sure you don't be dumb like me. Bruh. So one of the biggest negatives for me is battery life. Now, battery life is not that bad, I guess. Well, for a handheld PC anyway. So you're getting pretty similar performance to the original Steam Deck. Because of that 120Hz screen, that takes a bit more battery life. If you put it down to 60Hz, you will get a bit more, especially like Horizon Zero Dawn. You're looking at about an hour and a half, especially if you're trying to get to 60 FPS. So it kind of ranges between an hour and a half to 2 hours on AAA games, 2.5 to 3 hours on 10-watt games. So for example, GameCube and Wii emulation, and then about 4 to 5 hours on super easy stuff. So like PSP emulation or 2D games like speedrunners or whatever the case may be. Honestly, that's another negative actually. I would actually like this to be a 16:10 display. So you might be like, well, why do you care about it being a 16:10 display? Like, and the main reason is that not only do you get a bit more real estate, especially when you're talking about a screen this small, any extra size is kind of helpful. More importantly, 16:10 is actually more balanced. So for example, with 16:9 content, you only have a little tiny border on the top and bottom, which I kind of prefer actually. It makes it feel a little more cinematic. But in 4:3 content mainly, so if you're playing a lot of emulators, it actually means that it fills a lot more of the screen. Another issue I have is actually not the VRR. The VRR is actually fine. Like, I've heard a lot of people saying like, oh, well, the ROG Ally, that has VRR. So, or in other words, the screen can adapt better to certain games to make them feel smoother, and I heard a lot of people complain about that. For me, that actually really wasn't an issue, especially if a game already only runs at 60Hz and I lock the screen to 60Hz, then it runs absolutely fine. One of the big issues for me actually is the fact that it's a portrait display. It's not really that bad, especially playing modern games, will run it absolutely fine. The portrait display does get into some issues when you're trying to adjust the resolution, and obviously a lot of older games, like I did the Cars test on here, didn't pass the Cars test, neither did my laptop. So far the Steam Deck's the only PC I've had that has actually passed out of the box. Ironically, sometimes even cutting the power to a certain game. So let's say a game, if you cap it at 15 watts and 60 FPS, sometimes it can actually run better than a game that can fluctuate between 15 and 19 watts and whatever frame rate. Why not? You get slightly better battery life, but that's one of the problems I'm going to get into, is that for some strange reason, this can only go up to 20 watts because of the heat issues that I mentioned earlier. I really don't think going to 30 watts is great in handheld mode, but it would be good if you had it docked. So similar to a Switch, I think it's because it's capped in the BIOS, you can only go up to 20 watts. So literally, as I'm editing this video, GPD just released a BIOS update for the Win Mini, which unlocks the TDP and apparently fixes an issue with memory frequency, which I didn't even know they had. The main thing is that it actually unlocks the TDP, so we can go up to that 30 watts if we really want to. Maybe even above, I don't know, but I definitely would not recommend going above that, otherwise you may end up literally frying the device. But the strange thing is that it won't be released on the website. You can only go to this email address to go and get it. And I think the reason why is they don't want people going, oh, let's download this and let's put the TDP up, and then their system catching on fire and destroying everything. So it's a bit weird how they've done it, but I guess it kind of makes sense. And there we are. Overall, this device is actually awesome. I absolutely love it. Like, as I'm starting to use it more and more, I'm starting to find the gripes and the issues with it, but so far I'm absolutely loving it. I can do Switch emulation, everything up to Switch super easy, even some PS3 games I can run relatively easily, and it's just a fantastic little device for what it is. And on top of that, I actually edited on it, and so I'll quickly cut in now how I felt about that. Honestly, editing on here really isn't that bad, and especially with CapCut's feature where I can upload all these files onto like a server thing, edit between both this and my laptop. I may actually, you know, bounce back and forth between these two. Obviously, I'd much rather, you know, on my laptop than I would on here. This is actually quite a bit better than I was expecting, at least initially. Again, there are definitely some issues that should be ironed out, and maybe if you're thinking of buying this, it might be worth waiting next year to see what the second gen model is, which will probably be a lot more refined than this one. You know, if you want me to do an update video on certain aspects, like certain game performance or things you can tweak with it or anything, just let me know. Thanks for watching, catch me in this video, and I'll see you there.